Glenfiddich and Aston Martin partnered to release a vintage whiskey from 1976. It was aged 48 years in a single sherry cask, and there were only 50 bottles released worldwide, which is why I just have the 16-year-old to try today. Hey there, I'm Nath Martin, the Whiskey Scribe. Taste is subjective, whiskey is diverse, and this channel is about understanding it well enough to enjoy it on your own terms. Now today I've got a bottle of the Glenfiddich partnership with the Aston Martin Formula 1 team. Now this bottle was provided kindly to me, but my opinions are going to be my own, so I'll tell you if it's good, I'll tell you if it's not so good, or if it's not really worth the price. Now rather than spending too much time talking about the marketing story, which Glenfiddich has done in extensive detail, you can find that online, I'm just going to focus on what is inside the glass. So with that in mind, this expression is the Glenfiddich and Aston Martin Formula 1 Team 16-year-old limited edition release number 2. It's a single malt whiskey from Glenfiddich Distillery, aged 16 years in 5 casks. First fill bourbon, port pipes, Oloroso sherry, red wine casks, and Fino sherry butts. It is chill filtered, it does have colour added, it's bottled at 43%, and the retail pricing is $170 here in Australia. That's kind of surprising to me, because the price point then is about the same as the 15-year-old Glenfiddich, which this is a limited release, and it's a partnership with a brand of cars that is well out of my price bracket. So the fact that they're not overinflating that price, kudos to Glenfiddich for that. But regardless, let's see if it's worth it. What the F1? Let's just pretend that didn't happen. I'm gonna go with... Now, we know this one is chill filtered. There's reasonably good legs happening there for a chill filtered whiskey. That's pretty good. On the nose, it's almost a trademark of Glenfiddich whiskies that on the nose you're going to get a little bit of stewed apple, and I quite like it. It sits halfway between a stewed apple and like actual fresh crisp apple. You get a bit of vanilla, bit of honeydew. Glenfiddich whiskies are always quite light, fruity, and sort of fresh. And that's exactly what I'm getting here, but I'm getting like probably a little bit more of like a slightly earthy note from the wood. Okay, so far on the nose, pretty good. On the palate, slange. I quite like that. The palate is actually a little bit of a flip on the nose, because the nose still has, there's sweetness in there, but it's like more on the fresh, fruity side. The palate itself is quite caramel and butterscotch. It's not excessively sweet, but it's a little bit sweeter and probably a little bit more on the earthy sweetness compared to what the palate tells you, well, compared to what the nose tells you. Yeah, it's got a soft sort of mouthfeel happening. I find that the Glenfiddich 12-year-old, while I like it and it's fresh and fruity, the sweetness sort of sits like a teeny bit on the sharp side, whereas on this one, that sweetness is very much mellowed out. It's a lot smoother, it's a little bit of a nicer mouthfeel. Yeah, it's not the thickest feeling whiskey on your palate, but it's definitely got like a little bit of texture there. It's nice and soft in the mouth. In terms of the finish, that butterscotch note does stick around for a little while, so I'd probably call it like a medium to long finish. Yeah. If you gave this to me on a blind, I think on the nose I would have guessed Glenfiddich, but if I didn't get to nose it and I had to hold my nose and taste it, I would probably actually struggle to figure that this was a Glenfiddich whiskey. So I think it's getting some of the, what were the casks again? Yeah, so most of the whiskies that I tend to have from Glenfiddich are usually more on the bourbon and sherry, Oloroso sherry side. But the red wine and the Fino sherry and the port pipes, I think it's just adding a little bit more of like an earthiness that I'm not used to with Glenfiddich. And I actually quite like that. That's different to their normal expressions. Okay, I'm happy with that. You never sort of, with these brand partnerships, you never quite know which way it's going to go. But that's really good. There's enough of the classic Glenfiddich notes in there for it to be a Glenfiddich whiskey, but it's different enough to warrant a special release brand partnership. I haven't looked into too much about like the reasoning between partnering Glenfiddich with Formula One and Aston Martin, but this is kind of, I would put this into the more premium of the Glenfiddich whiskies that I've tried. That's pretty good. That's a really nice whiskey for that price point. And I'd say who this is for, somebody who likes sherry-aged whiskies is probably going to appreciate this. It's not an absolute sherry bomb. It's not massively sweet, but there's enough of those sherry sweet sort of flavor notes in there to satisfy a sherry lover. But for somebody who likes Glenfiddich and is a little bit partial to like something a little bit sweeter, this would probably sit really, really nicely. But also, this would actually be a great gift for a car enthusiast who dabbles a little bit in whiskey, because honestly, it's pretty cool. Aston Martin, who hasn't watched a Bond movie, and were the Aston Martin cars in the Bond movies? Hey Google, what brand of car does James Bond drive?
Aston Martin DB5 on the website astonmartinsandiego.com.
Yeah, so if you know a car enthusiast or a Bond fan, because Aston Martin was James Bond's car of choice, full of gadgets and everything, this would actually be a pretty cool gift. In terms of the flavor notes that the distillery actually says, their description is sweet, richness and structure are carefully layered. The result is a refined and assured single malt where silken texture, orchid fruit, and an elegant oak flow together in perfect harmony. I can't argue with that. I do like this. This is probably, well, now that it's been sitting in the glass for a little while, it's opened up a little bit. It's softened on the sweetness and it lets a little bit more of that oak come through. But yeah, that's probably one of the nicer Glenfiddich whiskies I've had, and I can't be certain, but I think Glenfiddich was probably the first single malt I ever had. It's probably the first single malt most people had because their marketing and their reach is so great. But that's a good one from Glenfiddich, and kudos to them for not overpricing it too. So it's worth checking out. It's worth grabbing. If you're a collector, it would go great in your collection. If you're a car enthusiast, if you're a Bond fan, it ticks a lot of different boxes. Yeah, that's actually a win for me. Hopefully the F1 team also has a win. But anyway, I'm going to keep this short and simple. Enjoy what's in your glass and slange. Vroom.